चेहरे पर मुस्कान जैसे रुक सी गई है. As they say, the smile is stuck to my face, and I'm sure it is stuck to all of your faces. Let's hold on to it. इसको ऐसे ही रहने देते हैं. और जो गुरुदेव से सीखा है, आइए जो जीतू जी ने आज किया है और जो समा बांधा है, उसके लिए खुले हृदय से चलिए सब मिलकर कहते हैं, खूब किया, खूब किया, खूब किया, वाह वाह मेरे गुरु भाई. जीतू जी रोज इसी तरह इसी समय पर एक नई कथा, एक नई देवी की कहानी लेकर आएंगे. मुझे यकीन है कि हम सब रोज छोटे बच्चों की तरह बैठकर वेट करेंगे कि आज क्या सुनने को और क्या देखने को मिलेगा. और अब जो मैं सुबह से अब तक जो होते हुए देख रही हूँ, सचमुच हृदय कहीं गदगद हो उठ रहा है कि मैं इससे जुड़ी. वो युवा जो निस्वार्थ और इतने प्रेम भाव से आज के ज़माने में जो हालात हैं, उनको हाथ में लेते हुए, उनके अगेंस्ट, उनके साथ चलते-चलते इस नए युग की टेक्नोलॉजी, इस नए समय की डिमांड के हिसाब से सुबह से चल रहे हैं और हमें भी अपने साथ लेकर चल रहे हैं. हमें भी मौका दे रहे हैं कि हम कहीं पीछे ना छूट जाएँ. वो पूर्ण प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि हर चीज़ को संभव किया जाए, हर चीज़ को आसान किया जाए. वो हमारा हाथ थामे चल रहे हैं. आप चलते चलिए, आगे की यात्रा बहुत सुंदर और बहुत सुखद होगी. This is the blessing of our Guru, our divine Guru, विश्व संत सिद्धेश्वर ब्रह्म ऋषि गुरुदेव. उन्हीं के आशीर्वाद को लेते हुए let's move on to the next session. This is another youth take on Ramayana. Haven't heard it before, so I will talk about it after the session. Looking forward to hearing it from you, Mayank. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Mayank.
Welcome to the first session of the great Indian story, Ramayana. Two beautiful epics have arisen from the people who have taken birth in the land which is commonly called as India today, but also called by names like Bharat, Aryavrat, Tianzu, Jambudvipa, and many such names. There are four great ages also mentioned as per the scriptures of our country. The first one is the Satyug, the second, Treta, the third, Dwapar, and the fourth, Kalyug. We live right now in the Kalyug, and the story of Ramayana happens in the second yug of Treta. I want to probably point out at this point of time that there are many questions which arise in most listeners of this tale. Is there only one version? Are there different interpretations of it? What really happened? Is this even true? Or is it just a fantastical imagination of the author or the poet? Well, these are difficult questions to answer. But a different way of looking at this question is, irrespective of what happened, what the fact or the incident was, what's the message behind it? What's the wisdom that I can take which will help me become a better person, inculcate positive values and life skills into it? Because when we look at it from that angle, it becomes much more positive, it becomes much more complete, and will lead to a much more fruitful experience. As a facilitator and storyteller, I will try my best to make this a fun, memorable, and most importantly, a learning experience for all of you. So with that, let's dive into the great Indian story, Ramayana. It is said that the Ramayana has a different version in every single Southeast Asian country that you can find. Within India, you can find anywhere between 18 to 20 different regional interpretations and tellings of the story. As you go deeper in smaller communities, the variations keep on increasing. It is said that when Shiva once told Shakti, the goddess, this version of the story, he used 100,000 verses. When Hanuman told his version of the Ramayana, he used 60,000 verses. When Valmiki, the person whose version is probably the most famous and renowned today, when he said it, he used 24,000 verses. And the people who interpreted from him, and these are singing poets and bards, they tend to use lesser and lesser. So There is a difficulty and complexity and questions around what else happened in this entire story. But don't you worry about it. Today, I will try to take you in a simple yet engaging way of going about the story. This is the image which you can probably find in most houses and offices and spaces across the land of India and even outside in the Indian subcontinent. There are modern interpretations of this image, for example, in this way. I probably would ask you again that do not go by the appearance of these characters, but what they signify and what they stand for. Today, in my first story, I'm going to probably start with the source of the author of it. My first story is how a thief became a sage. There was once a bandit by the name Ratnakar who had made a living by stealing and scaring passerbys into giving up their belongings. One day, the son of Brahma, the trinity of gods, Narada, was passing by. Ratnakar, not knowing who he was, came in front of him, happy that he found the victim for the day. Now Narad, very nonchalantly, very coolly, stood his ground and said, "What do you want?" Ratnakar said, "I want all that you have on you right now. Give me that veena. Give me the hands which you have. If you don't, I will cause a lot of trouble for you. I will break your head from the mace I have or cut your hand from the sword I have." Narada simply kept quiet and said, "If this is what you want from me, rags and a musical instrument, please take it. You don't have to cause any violence for that. You don't have to break my head for it." Ratnakar, for once, actually thought, what makes this man so cool and calm and composed? He said, "Would you like to listen to a song?" And he started singing songs of glory to all the gods that he followed, believed, and heard stories of. The music and songs of Narada captured Ratnakar's imagination, and he paused over there and asked him what was the reason and source of his calmness. After he revealed the answer, Narada now asked Ratnakar a question. "Why do you steal? Why do you not make a honorable living?" Ratnakar said, "I tried agriculture, but I could not see the pain that I was causing to plants, to trees, and to animals. Then I tried carpentry. I saw so many other things to do, but I could see that every single place I was causing so much harm to people and to things that had done nothing to me. And finally, I thought, what if I take from human beings who already take from someone else? And that is why I chose the profession of stealing, of becoming a bandit." Narada asked a counter question. He told him, "You are doing a job which you know causes so much sin in you and the consequences which you have to bear. You say that you're doing this for your family. You say that you're doing this because you have no options. Will your family also be participant to the sin which you are causing? Will they take that cross on their shoulders as well?" Ratnakar, for some reason, felt, of course, I am doing this for them. So if I get any sin, they will gladly take it. He went home. He asked his father first. His father said that no, your actions are your actions alone. We are not part of that. At least I am not. He felt that maybe his father is strict. So he went to his mother, the one who's always loved him. His mother said the same thing. "No, my son, I have given you all that I could. I gave you the sanskar, I gave you the character and values to make you a good human being. But if this is what you have chosen, the consequence is yours and yours alone." Then he finally went to his wife and kids, for whom he had done so many sacrifices. The children and their wife said the same thing. "You are in charge of taking care of us. How you do it is your concern. But if you are going to live a life of sin, then that consequence is not going to be shared by us. It is on you." All of these answers opened Ratnakar's eyes. Ratnakar felt a deep sense of sorrow and finally went back to Narada and sat in front of him. As he sat, he asked him, "What is it that I do not know in my life? How do I find the truth of it?" And then Narada said, "Take any word which comes to your mind, sit below this tree, and in time to come, you will find this answer." He blessed him and he got up and he left. Not sure what to do, he simply started with the first word which came to his mind. He felt that I have caused so much of death in each other's life, in the life of so many people. I will start with that word itself. So he started using the Hindi word of death which is called Mara. So he started with Ma Ra, Ma Ra, Ma Ra. And slowly Mara became Ra Ma, Ra Ma. And when it reached Ram, he found the solution to the peace in his heart. He had questions. Whose name is this? Rama, which seems to give me so much of peace. Remember, if Mara is death, the opposite of Mara is Rama, which is life. And he lost himself in such deep meditation, reflection of all the action that he did in his life. He lost track of time, he lost track of food, he lost track of even taking care of his body. And slowly, it is said that an entire anthill formed itself around him. But this person inside, Ratnakar, was lost in reflection. Finally, after a few days, Sage Narada arrives over there. He moves some of the anthills around him and awakens this man and tells, Arise, Valmiki. The gods are happy with your penance. You have now been elevated to the highest form of a sage, which is called as a Brahma Rishi. Why am I called a Valmiki? Who is this Valmiki? He said, You are now Valmiki, because the Sanskrit term for sand is Valu, the person who was reborn from the sand hill, from the ant hill made around him, is now going to be called Valmiki. Valmiki now had a story in his mind. He had reflected and learned about the story of Ram, which had impacted his thought and thinking so much. He wanted to write a book. And finally, by the blessings of Narada, he started to write Valmiki's Ramayana, the story of Ram. As we know, the more recent versions are like Tulsidas's Ramcharitmanas. Hanuman's Ramayana is a very interesting one. But as I told you, the variations are many, the interpretations are many, but Ram's nobility, Sita's chastity, Hanuman's devotion, Vibhishan's loyalty, all of these stick across at all places. So, as now I have given you the beginning of the story, the base of the poet and the writer of the story, or this version of the story, now let's get into one of the characters. It's very difficult to say what's the beginning because this is an account of a person's life. So today I will start my story the with a very interesting character who's the heart of the story. And when I say heart, I mean Sita the girl. The story about the girl who was found in a field. It is said that there was a group of farmers who had invited their king, Raja Janak, to their field. It was the first sowing festival of the season. They wanted the king to hold a golden plow, which is also called as a hull, and move it and make lines where they would then sow seeds for harvest. When the king stood over there along with his wife and pulled the golden hoe, he realized that it was firm at the same time soft, giving a sign of good times and good harvest to come. But after a few moments, he realized that his hull stopped someplace. He noticed that in the furrow which he had made, he realized there was a small girl putting her hand out with great radiance, healthy and smiling, looking up at her. All the farmers erupted in joy, for Raja Janak was a childless king. All of them convinced him that this was the earth goddess, Bhumika's way of blessing the king for all the good deeds and the good king that he was. Finally, Raja Janak gets down to this child, receives her up, and holds him in her hands. He says, Fatherhood does not come from seed or giving biological birth, it comes from the heart. This girl now will be called as Mithila. The city of Raja Janak was called Mithila, and this person who's now going to be the princess of Mithila will be called as Maithili. She will also be called as Videhi, which is the name of the land, Videha. This is modern day Bihar today. She will also be called as Janaki, the one who chose Janak. And finally, I will call her Sita, the one who was found in the furrow of a field. So many beautiful names. Sita is now part of a very selected group of children who are called as the Avunijas. Avunijas are those people who are not born in the womb of a physical human being or a mother. That makes these children very special. Raja Janak had now found a beautiful daughter to be a father to. Let's go to another story of another king now. If Raja Janak, the father of Sita, is the first story, the second story is about the father of Ram, Dashrath. Dashrath had a daughter which so many of us don't know about. Think about it. Have you ever heard? All of us have heard about the brother of Ram, but how many of us have heard about the real sister of Ram? There was a girl by the name Shanta. Now, Shanta meant that she would bring peace into the life of Dashrath, but she did not bring peace, for the king wanted sons. He had married Kaushalya to have this, but Kaushalya did not give her a boy. Then he went to the king Kekaya because it was said that Kekaya's daughter Kaikai would bore a illustrious son who would be a great king who will be known across ages. He went to him and said that I wish to marry your daughter. Kekaya was initially very unsure. The name of the king of Kekaya was Ashwapati. Ashwapati said, if my daughter marries you, she would be junior queen, because you already have a queen in Kaushalya. Dashrath had an answer ready for it. He said that even though she would be my second wife, she would be queen mother, because your daughter is told to be going to give birth to a boy who will be the king, who will be the firstborn king. Finally, when the marriage happened, neither did she give a boy or a girl after marriage. Dashrath's problem prevailed. And finally, he married a third time to a woman called Sumitra. Even Sumitra was not able to give him the joy of having a son. With this, he started wondering that is there any way out? Shanta finally turned out to be the reason of how Ram was born. My next story for today is about how a king by the name Romapada comes from the kingdom of Anga to Dashrath. When he reaches over there, he says that I probably have the solution to having sons. But first, you'll have to listen to the trouble that I am in. King Indra, the king of all gods, refuses to come anywhere near my kingdom and shower any rain because he is envious of a great sage who lives in my kingdom by the name Rishyashringa. Now, Rishyashringa is a person who is being guarded by his father, Vibhandaka, and he has never seen any woman in his life. There is a great circle which Rishyasringa's father has made, also called as the Vibhandaka Rekha. We've heard of Lakshman Rekha, but this was a line. Rekha is another Hindi word or Sanskrit word for line. He's drawn a great circle around his heritage, his hermitage, or his ashram, and any woman who is to step inside will instantly burst into flames. And it is not just a human being in a female form who can't enter, even a cow or a mare or or a deer, anyone who enters will instantly turn into flames. I have tried to send many people, including my queens, but no one wills to go. If your daughter can find a way of getting Rishya Shringa outside, then I will promise you that Indra will get some way to have you help have sons. Finally, Shanta steps up and she says, I see the urge of you having sons. For that, I am willing to try. So, Shanta makes a great grand plan. She goes inside and she goes near the hermitage, very careful to not cross over into the line. And as she stands out over there, she notices that I will have to explain to Rishashinga what a woman is. But how can a sage as powerful as Rishashinga not know who a woman is? For that, you will have to know the story of Rishashinga's father, Vibhandaka. Vibhanaka was focused in his tapasya, which is also another word for meditation, for work ethic, for deep committed effort towards uplifting one's soul and intelligence. But one day, Indra, envious of the fact that Vibhandaka, might become stronger than Indra, sends an Apsara, an angel, to disturb him. Seeing the angel, Vibhandaka loses his focus and loses his motivation. Because of that, a son is now born, but a son who is born through a doe. Seeing this, the son has a horn on his head, and this boy is named as Rishyashinga. He promises that the way my focus was broken because of a woman, I will never let that happen to my son. So he drew that Vibhandaka Rekha, the line across, where if any woman were to cross over, any female, that person would burst into flames, and he hoped to keep her away. So she as she stands near the corner of the line, she starts singing. She starts attracting Rishashinga. Rishashinga, for the first time, sees a woman. He's enamored by her. That what kind of a creature is this? And she says that you, through your powers, can create life outside. I, through my nature, can create life inside. Would you not like to know how? And slowly but surely, one by one, day after day, Rishishringa grows very, very fond of Shanta. And finally, one day, when his father wasn't there, steps out and now embraces Shanta and says that I am willing to spend the rest of my life with him. Feeling victorious, Shanta finally gets Rishashinga outside and makes him from a sage and a saint into a householder for the happiness which he had. Finally, Indra now lets go and says that, thank you so much for breaking this Rishashringa's tapasya. I will now allow for rain to fall in your kingdom. Out of happiness, Rishashringa is now sent to Dashrath. Why? For Rishashinga's powers can now help Dashrath have sons, what he was not able to have biologically. The next step of the story is when Rishashinga stands over there and conducts something called as a yagna. Now, a lot of people think a literal translation of the word yagna is sacrifice, a fire sacrifice. But there is a difference. In yagna, there is someone called a yajamahan, which means the initiator of the yagna. This is a very simple, the simplest word one can use is yagna is an exchange of items, of materials, of energies, of thoughts, of prayers in exchange for benevolence, in exchange of wisdom, in exchange of boons. But a sacrifice is where someone causes harm to himself or herself, someone gives up something, loses something in order to appease a certain deity or a god, and then leads to acquiring of something. A yagna involves giving things like butter, ghee, grains, sweets, flowers into the holy fire in between. The place where all of this is put inside is called as a Havan Kund. And the entire area where all of them sit and perform this yagna is called as the Yagnashala. As Rishashinga does this entire thing, the gods consume all of these offerings and burp in satisfaction. And finally, as they go through the entire thing, all of them, when they offer their offerings inside the fire, end with the word swaha. Swaha means two things. It can also be said to remind the person, to remind gods that, see, it is the Yajamahan who is initiating this yagna, is the one who's offered it. And the other variation is Swaha is the name of the wife of the fire god. The fire god is the reason who consumes all of these offerings and ensure that it reaches the respective gods. But he does not do so unless and until the name of his wife is uttered before him. And that is the two reasons of why Swaha is said during a Havan or a Yagna. Finally, the gods are happy and arises from inside a magic potion, a pudding. This pudding is now given to the Yajamahan, which is Dashrath, and said, give this to your wives, and each of them will bore you a son that you desire. Finally, he gives it, one half of it, to Kaushalya, which is the wife who he respects. Then he gives the other half to Kaikai, the wife whom he loves. But the two wives remember that there is a third wife who he has not given this to. So Kaushalya gives one half and Kaikai gives one half to Sumitra, the third wife. And through this, Dashrath has four beautiful sons. From Kaushalya comes the Ram, from Kaikai comes Bharat, and from Sumitra comes Lakshman and Shatrughan. This is the birth of the four sons of Dashrath, whom he had desired from such a long time. But the story becomes very interesting over here. Here's a fun fact for you. As I mentioned that there are so many different regional retellings and variations of it, in the Jain Ramayana, Ram is not called as Ram. Ram is called as Padma and Sita is called as Padmavati. So that's a new information for you. So this is an example of what the Havan, which is the fire area called, and the Yagnashala, which is the place where all of this happens, the entire dome kind of a structure over here. Something that all of us could probably learn from this is that the Yagna teaches us that if we want to get something in life, probably we'll have to give first. Don't expect to receive if you're not willing to give. Everyone wants to get, but how many want to give first? There is a saying which says that confidence precedes success, gratitude precedes happiness, and similarly, giving precedes getting. The world tells us and teaches us to be go-getters, to go get what you want, to get your dreamers. The Ramayana teaches us, Yagna teaches us, our culture teaches us, give first because a giver for sure gets. How many people have you heard who have become bankrupt because of giving? They might be poor, they are never bankrupt. But how many cases have you heard in the urge, in the pursuit of earning a lot of money, they have gone into so much debt and have completely become bankrupt? The coffers of a generous person are never empty. If you give from one place, it will come in from 10 directions into your life. The Yagna teaches us there is always an exchange. If you want to get something, first we must learn to give. First we must learn to let go. First we must believe, and then the miracle happens. I hope that all of you have taken some nice personal learning from the story and this example so far. Now let's move ahead to the young years of these children. As I show you this image, I want to highlight that this is an image of a Gurukul, the ancient way of education, of prince, of royal families, of Brahmins, many, many centuries ago. This used to be a common setup where the guru or the teacher or the master used to have many students living with in the ashram or the hermitage that he or she is from. Children used to learn and stay over there all the time, which means that they used to learn not only subjects of study, but also about everyday living, from cooking to cleaning to archery to economics to astrology to astronomy, all topics. They used to probably start staying with the guru from anywhere between 3 years to 5 years of age till the age of 23 to 25. Once they have completed it, it was customary that the student before they leave would give something called a Guru Dakshina, which is not a fee as such, but a gratitude, a honorarium for the service and the direction that the Guru has given into a life. Now, these are kings, these are warriors, these are royal families. So even their gifts used to include cows, gold, land for them to be able to use and for the next person to be able to enjoy. In one sense, it was one of the concepts of paying it forward for the next generation to learn from the Guru. Something interesting, isn't it? In this case, my next story is going to be about how kings to be were thought to be Brahmins. Now think about it. They are from a royal family. Dashrath is a king, he's a Kshatriya. Now, why would their children or his children be told that your children should probably learn how to be a Brahmin? And this is the story. I will try my best to make as much justice to it so that we can make it a memorable experience for you. Now, what happened was Vishwamitra and Vashishta were the two gurus whom these four children learned a lot from. Vashishta was the first one who brought in a lot of mental development, thought development, and values based development in the lives of these four children. He looked at the king and he said that it is very, very important that your children learn to be Brahmin Varna rather than Brahmin Jati. There's a difference between Varna and Jati. A lot of us have heard the word Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, and Brahmins. While there are different names for different castes or jatis, which is the closest word, but a mindset is what is the closest word one can use to the word Varna, and caste is the closest word that you can use for the word Jati. So Vashishta wanted these children of the kings to have a Brahmin mindset. And a Brahmana's objective is every single day expanding his mind. What does this mean, expanding his mind? To understand the world for what it is, to be able to be aware of how society is, what are the different ways that different beings live by, what are the rules which govern them, what is the way of upliftment, how do you move from the material to the immaterial, from consciousness to super consciousness. All of this is the everyday pursuit of a Brahmin. But Dashrath is not yet convinced. What if my children go and live inside the hermitage? What if they leave the kingdom and start living in a forest? Who will take care of my line? Who will take care of my people and my subjects? Vashishta says, I have an answer to that as well. A king, when he mimics some other kings without understanding what they're doing, then a king becomes a Shudra, a servant. When a king tries to negotiate, tries to give things and take things from other people in his society, in his kingdom, to ensure that the army is strong, the treasury is filled, then he becomes a trader or a vaishya. When he uses his power to defeat other people, to defeat enmity, and to keep control over evil things, then he becomes a Kshatriya. But finally, when he realizes that rules are not made, power is not used to domesticate or dominate people, but it is simply made as a way to ensure that even the weakest can survive and the strong don't make a corner hold, then he rises and becomes and starts getting the mind of a seer, a saint, a sage. He will then realize that respect, power, happiness are all three different concepts. One does not need the other. Happiness is not dependent on power alone. If you want your children to learn this in life and to be free from all of this, then give them Brahman Varna, give them the best knowledge of Brahmanas. Now Dashrath is convinced. Dear followers, dear listeners, I want you to tell the same thing and ask yourself the same question. Are you expanding your mind every single day? It is said in a very famous thinking of our society that uh, there are these 4 to 5 different kinds of places where different kind of people came from. It is often said that Brahma is the creator. So from Brahma's mind came Brahmins, from his shoulders came warriors and rulers, from his thigh came the traders, from his leg came Shudras, and the ones who were born out of this entire system were called as Dalits. They were called as people who are outcasts, who lived in the forest, and by all those names. Remember, this is something which we should take with a pinch of salt. To understand it and not ensure that it ruins our mindset is probably the most important thing for us to learn from this story. Are we expanding our mind to include everyone, irrespective of where they are born? Is probably the next step of evolution in our mindset and thinking, which is very needed today. And that's the modern perspective I wanted to bring out. Now is the time for the next guru to come in. This next guru is by the name Vishwamitra. Now, Vishwamitra had always been jealous of Vashishta. Vishwamitra's name was earlier something else. His name was Kaushika, and Kaushika from Vishva Shatru became Vishwamitra. And he said, I have a ashram, a hermitage, where I am trying to make so many beautiful researches, so many different understandings, that how do we give the world a great set of rulers, great kings. For that I do my yagna. But when I do my yagna, I am disturbed by ferocious rakshasas. When I gave up my kingship to become a Brahmin, I gave up all my weapons. I can teach your sons how to wield the strongest of weapons, how to convert an arrow into and endow in them the power of a beast, of storms, of sun, of moon, and make it missiles. I can teach all of that to your children, but I need them to ensure that my yagna does not become affected and is not polluted by the Rakshasas. Which king would give their sons as protectors for it? Vishwamitra had a reason. He wanted to know that his rival Vashishta, if he has taught them so much, I'm sure there must be something else. Let me see how good they are. Now is the time for learning not only the theoretical part which they did from Vashishta, but now the practical, the war part of it from Vishwamitra. So finally, two sons are given by the king Dashrath. He says, what if if I give you four, and what if two of them don't come up? So I will give you two sons. Vishwamitra says, okay, I am willing to. And they now step out towards the ashram. They reach one point where Vishwamitra says, if we go straight, it's a short route, but it is going to be a longer time. It's a short route, but it's going to be safer. And the other route which we have is a longer route, but it is filled with a lot of Rakshasas. Which one should we take? The boy said, definitely the short one, which is safer also. So I think that's the one we should take. Vishwamitra, in anger, turns around and he says, follow me. And he marches back to the city of Ayodhya. Ayodhya was the name of the capital of Dashrath city. Ayodhya means the place where no wars are fought. He says that these two sons of yours are not fit for the role that I have in mind. Now they say, I want the other two. Dashrath was very fond of his eldest son, Ram, but scared that Vishwamitra might utter a curse, because Brahmins are and sages are known to become very angry when they don't get what they want. He lets go relentlessly. Finally, Ram and Lakshman are chosen to come accompany them towards this. They reach the same point, and again he asks, which one should we take? The one which is filled with the Rakshasas, or the one which is not? Ram now says, I believe we should go the one which is filled with Rakshasas. That is the path of knowledge, of experience, where we'll be able to use what you're going to teach us. We'll get an idea of what we're going to face. I am willing to face it bravely because I know you are with us. Lakshman nodded and he agreed. Vishwamitra had a smile on his face and he walked over there. On the way, Vishwamitra teaches them all those mantras which would endow their arrows with great powers. Dear followers, dear listeners, think about this. In your life, are you taking the road which is easy, which is, something which will get you by? Or are you willing to take the road which is difficult, which is different, which is new, which is unknown? Because the fruits at the end of both of them are very different. If you take a predictable path, you will get predictable results. If you take the unpredictable one, probably you'll get some incredible result. If you do what everyone else does, you will get what everyone else gets. If you do what no one is willing to do, you will get what no one is going to get. That is the modern perspective from this small story, and something which all of us can learn from. And finally, we now reach to the next part of our beautiful story. So, what happens when Ram, Lakshman, and Vishwamitra reach the ashram? Who encounters them? Who did they meet over there? And how they overcome it is something which we are going to be learning about now. As Vishwamitra began this yagna to find out how can they make and how can they help kings be great kshatriyas, great people who help the society arise and move upwards, and every single person is taken care of. The Rakshasas noticed that this ashram was in the forest. They felt and saw the same animalistic tendency of boundaries. Was they inside their territory? And they would not take it lightly, even if they fell for some time. The Rakshasas now start clamoring around. Ram and Lakshman have been given this opportunity and the job of ensuring that nothing and nothing at all comes in between and breaks this yagna. There are first screams, then squabbles, and then finally things thrown towards the Yagnashala and the Havan Kund. Ram and Lakshman are up to the mark. No matter what happens, they shoot arrows and they stop all of them from happening. Finally, they use all the powers told to them and taught to them by Vishwamitra and make a huge canopy which ensures that nothing reaches through. And finally, there is a huge roar which comes from the other side. It is the matriarch of all the Rakshasas, someone by the name Tadaka. Vishwamitra tells, this one lady, this woman, has the power of all the Rakshasas put together. Destroy her using the missiles and techniques that I taught you. Ram nonchalantly, coolly and calmly aims at Tadaka, and before he's about to let the arrow go, stops for a minute. Why? Because while he learnt his things of using weapons and missiles, he did not forget the knowledge given to him by his previous master. He said, but she's a woman. How can I attack her? And what Vishwamitra says is also something all of us would probably understand and learn from. Vishwamitra says, villains have no gender. Shoot your arrow right now. It does not matter whether you're Indian or you're non Indian or you're from a foreign place. It does not matter whether you're a man or a woman, boy or a girl. When we do something which is wrong, when we do something which is not in the interest and the fairness of something, we are all going to bear the consequence of it. And then, listening to this, Ram lets the arrow go across. It rips through the heart of Tadaka and she falls down with a huge thud like a mountain falling off. Behind her are two more people, two men with fierce eyes, with nails, and ready to attack and take revenge for the death of their leader. These two are Subahu and Marichi. Subahu also tries to pick up a boulder and a tree and attack Ram and Lakshman, but another arrow sees the death of him. Marichi, however, does not die. He escapes by fleeing away from the scene. Ram does not attack anyone who is fleeing away and scared. Finally, Vishwamitra feels, I have found two people who are now going to be the people who can take care and help me complete this yagna. Ram says, I am willing to guard you and guard this compound for all the time if needed. Vishwamitra smiles and he says that, do not think of the Rakshasas in a bad way. They are not hostile. They are only doing what comes to their nature. They're only doing how much their intelligence allows them to do. Do not misrespect and misunderstand their hostility. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Vishwamitra is advocating and taking the side of the Rakshasas while he is the same person who taught Ram and Lakshman those weapons and missiles and told them to use to kill them. Why would he take both sides? Because again, Vishwamitra is a sage. He has expanded his mind. His Brahman and his Brahm both have expanded. He says that for for the Rakshasas, we are people from outside. And for you and me, they are people from outside. It's the place where you look at it from. We will keep having violence till we misunderstand each other. And eventually, one day, there will be losses on both sides. But if you do not expand your mind and understand that this is part of nature, you will continue to think of them as the enemy and they will continue to think you as the enemy. Expand your mind, Ram. Give Tadaka, give Subahu a decent burial, respect them. Dead people are no one's enemy. Ram and Lakshman are stunned by this piece of wisdom given by Vishwamitra, and they follow every single rite, every single ritual which is respectfully given to any person who dies. With all great respect and rights, Tadaka and Subahu are now put inside the ground, and they finally make a prayer. Vishwamitra says, when they are reborn, let us hope that Tadaka is born as a friend and not as a foe, not as an enemy. That's the prayer, which is also something for all of us to learn from. This life is a circle. Have you heard that in Hindi, the word for tomorrow is kal? The word for yesterday is also kal. How can the future and the past be referred from the same word? The story and the reason behind that is that in our culture, in our beautiful Vedic knowledge, time is cyclical and not linear. It isn't that what happened yesterday cannot happen tomorrow. In fact, what happened yesterday has already happened before and is going to happen in the future. And what is going to happen in the future has already happened at some point of time in the past. It moves in a circle. Similarly, Satyug to Treta Yug, Treta Yug to Dwapar Yug, Dwapar Yug to Kali Yug, but after Kali Yug again comes back Satyug. This is the logic and reason behind it. What happens now after this is a story for another session. So, if you like this first session, I hope that you will take time to understand the characters, the incidents, and the little pieces of wisdom and story behind it. I hope this has been enjoyable for you. See you in session 2.